Star Trek's Prime and Kelvin timelines are soon to meet in an epic new crossover. The Prime Star Trek universe was just destroyed, thanks to Lore and the Bajoran Orb of Destruction. Now without a universe to call their own, Captain Sisko and the crew of the Theseus are adrift in the Star Trek multiverse, and in Star Trek number 25, find themselves facing the Kelvin Universe Enterprise. Star Trek number 25 was written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly and drawn by Liana Kangas. After the destruction of the universe, the Theseus was hurled into fluidic space. They narrowly escaped it, seemingly finding themselves back home. However, Data notices the stars are not correct, and they have, in fact, traveled 120 years into the past. The crew barely have any time to collect themselves before they are hailed by the Enterprise. However, it is the Kelvin Enterprise, and Captain Kirk informs Sisko, "We've been expecting you." Explained. Despite helping save Star Trek, the Kelvin timeline has been ignored. In the mid-2000s, after the critical and commercial, back-to-back failures of Star Trek, Nemesis and Star Trek, Enterprise, Paramount decided to completely reboot the franchise, creating the Kelvin timeline as a means of doing so. The point of divergence happened when the Narada, a renegade Romulan ship, traveled back to the early 23rd century and attacked the USS Kelvin, thus giving the timeline its name. In this new timeline, history played out slightly differently, but ultimately brought the crew of the Enterprise together. Furthermore, the technology was more advanced and flashier. Star Trek's Kelvin timeline lasted across 3 feature films, as well as a variety of titles from IDW, but as time passes, the opportunity for a 4th movie dwindles, making comics perhaps the only place fans can get more of these characters. After chronicling extensively the adventures of the Kelvin Enterprise, IDW is bringing them back one more time, to meet with Captain Benjamin Sisko. Still reeling from losing his universe, and with the threat of Lore still hanging over everything, Captain Sisko needs all the allies he can get. Star Trek's Prime and Kelvin timelines have met before, kind of. However, this is not the first time the Prime and Kelvin universes have collided. Prime Spock lived out the remainder of his life in the Kelvin universe, and it has been acknowledged on both Star Trek, Discovery, and Prodigy. The biggest crossover between the two universes, however, actually occurred, sort of, in issues 35 to 40 of IDW's first Star Trek comic. Q, from the Prime universe, paid a call to the crew of the Kelvin Enterprise. The storyline, titled The Q Gambit, also saw the Power Wraiths crossover, as well as Q supercharged with the powers of the Bajoran Prophets. It is worth noting that during the Q Gambit, none of the crew from either the Prime or Kelvin timelines met each other, making the crossover that is coming in Star Trek number 26 a historic occasion. When Kelvin Kirk meets Sisko, he tells the incredulous captain that he has been expecting him. This raises the question of how Kirk would know of Sisko in the first place, and it may very well lie in the Q Gambit. Q may have known about Lore's future actions, and apprised Kelvin Kirk to expect him. In the vastness of space, where time and realities intertwine, the unimaginable happened. The Prime and Kelvin timelines, 2 pillars of Star Trek's universe, had somehow collided, creating a new realm filled with both nostalgia and mystery. The unexpected convergence opened up realms where the classic crew members from one timeline would finally face their counterparts, and the intricate histories that defined each universe would blend. As the Enterprise neared the anomaly, the ship began to experience strange fluctuations in power. Control panels flickered, and crew members reported echoes of voices, whispers from beyond their reality. "Captain, I'm picking up unfamiliar quantum signatures," Spock reported, his eyebrow raised as he scanned the data. "Unfamiliar, Mr. Spock?" Kirk asked with a slight smirk. "Coming from a Vulcan, that's concerning." "Yes, Captain. These signatures appear to be from another timeline." Spock's voice carried a tinge of intrigue, rare for the usually stoic Vulcan. "Are you saying we're dealing with some sort of parallel universe?" McCoy interjected, looking skeptically over Spock's shoulder. "Yes, Doctor. This anomaly appears to be a rip in spacetime, a doorway between our timeline and another." Spock paused, his eyes fixed on Kirk. "A doorway to the Kelvin timeline." Before anyone could process the implications, a surge of energy erupted from the anomaly. The ship rocked violently, throwing crew members across the bridge. And then, suddenly, everything became calm, eerily still. When the view screen flickered back to life, the crew gasped. Floating directly ahead of the Prime Timeline Enterprise was the USS Enterprise of the Kelvin timeline. Its sleek design was unmistakably familiar, yet slightly alien, as if someone had reshaped Kirk's ship in a dream. Inside the Kelvin timeline's Enterprise, Captain James T. Kirk, young, brash, and daring, stared in stunned silence at the image on his own view screen. His own ship, but different. His own face, yet older, more seasoned. "Am I seeing double?" he muttered, glancing at Spock. The younger, alternate Spock's calm demeanor masked his own fascination as he analyzed the phenomenon. "It appears we are witnessing a temporal convergence, Captain," the younger Spock explained, his voice resonating with curiosity. Before either Kirk could respond, an audio transmission crackled to life. "This is Admiral James T. Kirk of the Federation Starship Enterprise. Identify yourself." The young Kirk's eyes lit up, and he leaned forward with a grin. "This is Captain James T. Kirk of the Federation Starship Enterprise. Nice to meet you, Admiral." A shared silence stretched across both bridges as each Kirk took in the sight of the other. The older Kirk, having lived through the tragedies and triumphs that defined the Prime Timeline, could see the spark of himself in the younger captain. It was like looking into a mirror that showed a past long gone but vividly remembered. Finally, older Kirk spoke. "I assume you know about the anomaly, Captain. It's causing a rupture between our realities." Young Kirk nodded, excitement sparking in his eyes. "Our scans showed the same, Admiral. But my crew and I think we can work together to close it." The two Spocks, meanwhile, were already collaborating. Working from separate consoles, they shared data across both ships, analyzing the anomaly's properties and calculating a plan to restore balance. It was a rare moment of Vulcan unity, undiluted by the subtle differences that set them apart. The crews, too, marveled at their counterparts, realizing that, despite the divergence of their timelines, they were bonded by a shared history and purpose. Amid the cooperation, Dr. McCoy, Prime Timeline's irritable but brilliant physician, grumbled, "Well, at least this isn't some mirror universe where they're all evil." "Don't jinx it, Bones," Kirk muttered back with a chuckle. After hours of intense calculations, both Spocks came to a solution. Both ships would need to combine their warp core's energy to create a temporal pulse that could seal the rift. But the maneuver was risky.